For nearly a century, the Murdaugh family ruled South Carolina's Lowcountry with untouchable power, a dynasty wrapped in privilege, secrecy, and influence. But behind the polished facade, a dark and twisted story was waiting to explode. This is a tale of murder, betrayal, and a family legacy shattered forever. Before we begin, a quick warning. This video covers graphic details, violence, and sensitive topics that may be disturbing to some viewers. If you are sensitive to this kind of content, please take care of yourself or consider watching another time. For nearly a century, the Murdaugh family stood as a towering symbol of influence and authority in South Carolina's Lowcountry. The family name was more than just a name, it was a brand, a guarantee, an institution. 3 generations of Murdaugh. Men had served consecutively as elected solicitors for the 14th Judicial Circuit, covering 5 counties. The reach of their influence spanned police departments, courtrooms, political offices, and private legal affairs. Their law firm, PMPE, founded by Randolph Murdaugh, Sr. in 1910, was a legal powerhouse in Hampton County. The family held so much sway that many locals quietly accepted an uncomfortable truth. The Murdaughs were above the law, but behind the Murdaughs' polished Southern image, a blend of tradition, privilege, and dark rumors simmered. Whispers of special treatment, intimidation, and buried secrets. These whispers would eventually grow louder, fueled by tragedy, corruption, and a shocking fall from grace that would bring one of South Carolina's most powerful families to its knees. The chain of events that led to the family's downfall began with a catastrophe on a foggy night in February 2019. On February 24th, 2019, 19-year-old Paul Murdaugh was at the wheel of the family's boat, speeding through the waters near Paris Island just after 2 a.m. On board were 5 of his close friends, including his girlfriend, Mallory Beach, a bright and beloved 19-year-old from a nearby town. The group had spent the evening drinking, despite the fact that Paul was underage. According to multiple accounts, Paul had been consuming large amounts of alcohol, becoming increasingly belligerent and reckless as the night wore on. Surveillance footage from that night showed Paul purchasing alcohol using his older brother's ID. At several points, he reportedly refused to let anyone else drive the boat. Passengers later described how Paul would sometimes slip into an alter ego when drunk, even referring to himself as Timmy, exhibiting erratic and aggressive behavior. Despite pleas from the others to stop driving, Paul refused. He insisted on staying at the helm, pushing the throttle, and navigating the boat through pitch-black waters. Then, suddenly, disaster struck. The boat slammed into a bridge piling near Archer's Creek. The force of the collision ejected several passengers into the cold water. Screams pierced the night as the stunned group scrambled for help. Among those missing was Mallory Beach. Her boyfriend, Anthony Cook, was recorded on police body cam footage in a state of frantic grief, crying out her name as emergency crews arrived. It took 8 agonizing days to locate Mallory's body downstream. What followed was a flood of questions and suspicion. Paul was identified as the driver, but many observed inconsistencies in the immediate aftermath. At the hospital, efforts were reportedly made to suggest someone else had been behind the wheel. Law enforcement's behavior drew scrutiny. The investigation seemed sluggish, and many believed Paul was receiving preferential treatment due to his last name. Some hospital staff and investigators noted how members of the Murdaugh family appeared to control the scene. Evidence collection was disorganized. Witness statements were delayed. And yet, the public outcry couldn't be ignored. Eventually, Paul was charged with 3 felony counts, including boating under the influence causing death. He pleaded not guilty. His family posted bail, and Paul returned to life at the family's sprawling 1,700-acre hunting property, Moselle. Justice, it seemed, would take its time. Meanwhile, the Beach family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, targeting not only Paul but also his older brother Buster, who had allegedly allowed Paul to use his ID to purchase alcohol, and even the convenience store that sold it. As the case made its way through the legal system, tensions surrounding the Murdaugh name intensified. Rumors of other suspicious incidents involving the family began circulating. And then, on June 7th, 2021, everything changed. At 10:06 p.m., Alex Murdaugh called 911. He sounded frantic. He told dispatchers he had arrived home to find the bodies of his wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul, near the dog kennels at Moselle. Both had been shot multiple times. Paul had been killed with a shotgun, Maggie with a high-powered rifle. The crime scene was brutal, described by investigators as execution style. The idea that someone had used 2 different weapons suggested either 2 shooters or someone intent on staging a deliberate scene. Alex told investigators. He had been visiting his mother and terminally ill father that evening and had returned to find the carnage. But questions arose almost immediately. Security footage, phone data, and GPS records revealed inconsistencies in Alex's timeline. Investigators noted his demeanor during the initial interviews, where he appeared composed, even rehearsed. Despite the violence of the scene, no blood was found on Alex's clothing. The murder weapons were never recovered. But the most damning evidence wouldn't emerge until later, when forensic specialists recovered a video from Paul's phone. Taken just minutes before the murders. In the video, Paul was filming a friend's dog at the kennels. In the background, 3 voices could be heard: Paul's, Maggie's, and Alex's. The timestamp placed Alex at the murder scene just minutes before he had claimed to arrive. This video would later become the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. As investigators dug deeper, other skeletons began to surface. The deaths of Maggie and Paul opened the door to renewed scrutiny of prior incidents involving the Murdaugh family, some long buried. In 2018, the Murdaugh's longtime housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, died following a reported fall on the steps at Moselle. Gloria had worked for the family for over 2 decades, raising the Murdaugh children and becoming a trusted figure in their household. The details of her fall were vague and inconsistently reported. The family claimed her death was an accident and suggested she had tripped over the dogs. But what happened after her death raised even more troubling questions. Alex Murdaugh encouraged Gloria's sons to file a wrongful death claim against him so that they could receive an insurance payout. He directed them to a lawyer, his close friend and former college roommate, who handled the claim. The insurance companies paid out over $4 million, but Gloria's sons never saw a dime. They weren't even told the money had been awarded. It wasn't until years later, as Alex's financial crimes came to light, that they learned the truth. The entire case had been a setup. Alex had allegedly stolen every cent of the settlement. Then there was the 2015 death of Stephen Smith. Stephen, a 19-year-old nursing student, was found dead in the middle of a rural road in Hampton County, miles from his car. His head bore injuries inconsistent with a vehicle impact, and his shoes were still on something investigators noted as odd in supposed hit-and-run cases. The cause of death was controversially ruled as a hit-and-run, but rumors swirled of a cover-up. Stephen, who was openly gay in a deeply conservative area, was believed by some to have had a secret relationship with a member of the Murdaugh family. After Paul and Maggie were murdered, investigators reclassified Stephen's death as a homicide and reopened the case. And then came the financial unraveling. By the fall of 2021, investigators had uncovered a stunning pattern of fraud by Alex Murdaugh. Millions of dollars had been stolen from clients, settlements, and even the firm that bore his family's name. Alex allegedly created fake bank accounts to funnel money away from victims, including those injured in car accidents, workers' comp cases, and wrongful death claims. Many of these clients were poor or vulnerable, trusting Alex to act in their best interests. Instead, he allegedly exploited them for personal gain. Alex's addiction to opioids was no longer a rumor. According to him, it had spiraled out of control for years, fueled by secret purchases of thousands of pills and a desperate need to maintain appearances. But many believed his crimes went beyond drug dependency, that the addiction had become a convenient excuse for something more sinister, a lifetime of entitlement, deception, and manipulation. Then came September 4th, 2021. Alex was found on the side of a rural road in Hampton County, bleeding from a superficial gunshot wound to the head. He claimed he had pulled over to fix a flat tire when a stranger pulled up and shot him. The story unraveled quickly. Within days, Alex admitted that he had orchestrated the shooting, hiring a former client and alleged drug dealer, Curtis Eddy Smith, to kill him in a botched assisted suicide attempt. The goal? To secure a $10 million life insurance payout for his only surviving son, Buster. Both men were arrested. In the wake of the scandal, Alex was disbarred. His law firm sued him. The Satterfield family sued him. The Beach family pushed forward with their lawsuit. His financial crimes now included over 100 charges, ranging from breach of trust to money laundering. And yet, no arrest had yet been made for the murders of Maggie and Paul. Then, in July 2022, the unthinkable happened. Alex Murdaugh was indicted for the murders of his wife and son. Prosecutors laid out their case, that Alex had executed the 2 closest people in his life to buy time, created distraction and regain control over a rapidly collapsing empire. They argued that he had feared exposure, not just to the public, but to the courts, to creditors, and to law enforcement. The murders, they said, were the ultimate manipulation, What had started as a local scandal had exploded into a true Southern Gothic tragedy, a dynasty rotting from the inside, poisoned by secrets, lies, and blood. And the stage was now set for one of the most dramatic trials in modern American history. In part 2, we'll take you inside the courtroom. The damning evidence, the emotional testimony, the moment Alex Murdaugh took the stand in his own defense, and the video clip that shattered his alibi. Sometimes, the people with the most to lose are willing to risk it all, because when the mask falls, what's left underneath can be terrifying. When Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were found dead on June 7th, 2021, it was a brutal end to 2 lives and the beginning of a devastating unraveling. In the early hours after the murders, Alex Murdaugh stood before investigators as a grieving husband and father. He claimed he had been visiting his parents when Maggie and Paul were killed and said he discovered their bodies near the dog kennels around 10 p.m. He appeared distraught, but something was off. Detectives began to quietly take note. Alex's story had gaps, his demeanor seemed rehearsed. And most crucially, investigators had doubts about the timeline. Phone records and forensic data didn't match the version Alex told. Questions multiplied. Why had Maggie and Paul been killed so violently? Why were 2 different guns used? And what would the motive be? In the days following the murders, attention returned to earlier Murdaugh scandals, particularly the 2019 boat crash that killed Mallory Beach. Paul had been awaiting trial on felony charges, and the case had pulled back the curtain on the Murdaugh family's influence. Many in the community suspected the murders were a targeted hit, either in retaliation or as part of a deeper conspiracy. But police weren't convinced. Then, more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, slowly, quietly. And they all pointed in one direction: Alex Murdaugh. While greeting in public, Alex was facing a private storm. Behind the scenes, his financial empire was collapsing. For years, Alex had siphoned money from his clients, his law firm, and even from the estate of their deceased housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield. Her 2018 death had been ruled accidental and alleged fall on the stairs of the Murdaugh home. But after her sons failed to receive a dime of the settlement Alex had promised them, lawyers began to take a closer look. A deeper investigation revealed that Alex had stolen millions. His addiction to opioids, extravagant lifestyle, and mounting debt painted the picture of a man spiraling out of control. It wasn't just theft. It was betrayal, fraud, deceit, and the walls were closing in. On September 3rd, 2021, Alex's law firm confronted him. Millions of dollars were missing. He was forced to resign the very next day in what looked like another shocking twist. Alex called 911 to report that he had been shot in the head while changing a tire on the side of the road. He claimed a stranger pulled over, offered help, and then opened fire. The Lowcountry held its breath. Was someone trying to finish the job? But the truth, once again, was more sinister. Within days, Alex admitted to orchestrating the shooting himself. The gunman? A former client named Curtis Edward Smith. The motive? Insurance fraud. Alex had allegedly hired Smith to kill him so his surviving son Buster could collect a $10 million life insurance payout, but the plan failed. Alex survived with a superficial head wound, and Smith was arrested. The scheme stunned even those who had grown numb to Murdaugh headlines. What kind of father would stage his own murder for money? What kind of man, barely 3 months after losing his wife and son, could construct such a cold calculation? In the months that followed, Alex was arrested and charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and filing a false police report. But those charges were only the beginning. Investigators continued to dig, and what they found shocked even seasoned attorneys and financial experts. Over the next year, Alex was indicted on dozens of charges involving financial crimes, embezzlement, wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. He had created shell accounts to funnel stolen funds. One such account was titled Forge, a name designed to mimic a legitimate financial firm. Using it, Alex diverted millions from client settlements, sometimes from clients grieving, lost loved ones, or suffering catastrophic injuries. Among the victims was the family of Hakeem Pinkney, a young man left quadriplegic after a car accident. Alex helped secure a large settlement, then stole most of it before Hakeem died. There were others. A deaf man injured in a crash, a family devastated by a wrongful death. Each time, Alex played the sympathetic lawyer, only to pocket what wasn't. His doubt the scope of the thefts painted a new picture of who Alex Murdaugh really was: not a grieving father or respected attorney, but a man who had used his power and trust to exploit those who needed him most. And yet, even with more than 80 financial charges piling up, Alex remained free on bond. No charges had been filed in the murders of Maggie and Paul. Prosecutors were silent. Speculation grew. Then, in July 2022, the dam finally broke. The state of South Carolina indicted Alex Murdaugh for the murders of his wife and son, according to prosecutors. The motive was clear. Alex was a man drowning in debt, facing exposure, and rapidly losing control of the empire his family had built. He killed Maggie and Paul, they argued, not in a moment of rage, but as a calculated move to gain sympathy, distract from his crimes, and buy himself time. But this time, sympathy wouldn't come dawed as news of the murder charges broke. So did the silence that had long protected the Murdaugh name. Former friends turned away. Legal colleagues condemned him. Even members of the community who once held the family in high regard began to wonder, how long had Alex been living a double life? In the lead-up to trial, investigators revealed a chilling new piece of evidence, a video taken from Paul's phone. It was filmed near the dog kennels on the Mazzell property minutes before the murders. You can hear three voices, Paul, Maggie, and a third man. Prosecutors say that third voice belongs to Alex Murdaugh. If true, it meant Alex was at the scene moments before the killings, contradicting his alibi and placing him squarely at the center of the crime. The courtroom drama that followed would grip the nation. But before the trial began, more pain and scandal would surface. The mysterious death of Stephen Smith, a 19-year-old nursing student found on a back road in 2015, was reopened. At the time, his death was ruled a hit and run, but evidence didn't match. Stephen's injuries suggested something else, something violent. Rumors of a connection to the Murdaugh family swirled, though no direct link has yet been proven. Still, the reopening of the case underlined a chilling theme. Where the Murdaugh name appeared, questions followed. The death of Gloria Satterfield was also reclassified. Her cause of death was no longer considered natural or accidental, and her body, which had never undergone an autopsy, became the subject of a possible exhumation. Her sons, once left in the dark, were finally getting justice. All the while, Alex sat behind bars, awaiting trial, not just for murder, but for dozens of charges spanning years of deceit. By January 2023, the stage was set. Cameras were allowed in the courtroom. The Murdaugh trial would become one of the most watched in modern history, drawing comparisons to the O.J. Simpson case and other infamous courtroom spectacles. But this wasn't just the trial of a man. It was the trial of a family legacy. In Part 3, we'll take you inside that courtroom, into the heart of the prosecution, the shocking testimony, the defense strategy, and the moment the jury delivered its verdict. But for now, one truth remains. When the mask of power is finally removed, what's left beneath can be far more terrifying than anyone imagined. Because sometimes, the true crime isn't what happens in the shadows. It's what happens in plain sight. When the guilty verdict was read aloud on March 2nd, 2023, Alex Murdaugh didn't flinch. He stood stone-faced as the jury declared what many had suspected but few could fully fathom, that the man once seen as the crown prince of a southern legal dynasty had brutally murdered his wife and son. The trial had gripped the nation. For weeks, viewers tuned in daily, watching every twist unfold in real time. And now, with the courtroom drama over, the questions began. What happens next? What becomes of the name Murdaugh in a region where it once carried weight, fear, and prestige? And what other secrets were still buried in the Lowcountry soil? After being sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, Alex Murdaugh was transferred to the South Carolina Department of Corrections. No possibility of parole. No chance at redemption. His fall was complete, but the ripple effects of his crimes were far from over. The murder conviction had lifted the lid on a Pandora's box of criminal activity that went well beyond that blood-soaked night at Mazzell. The financial crimes alone amounted to more than 100 separate charges: embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and breach of trust. Prosecutors said that Alex had stolen more than $8 million over the course of a decade. Not from faceless institutions, but from the most vulnerable people who trusted him: injured clients, grieving families, and even the sons of his own deceased housekeeper. Many of these crimes had been obscured by the Murdaugh's power and connections. But now, with the patriarch exposed, those once untouchable cases were finally seeing the light of day. In 2023, Alex faced trial for the financial crimes. One by one, the stories came out of clients whose settlement checks were rerouted, of forged documents, of fake bank accounts set up to funnel funds into his own pockets. In November of that year, he pleaded guilty to 22 federal charges. The admission marked a historic moment. the first time a member of the Murdaugh family had ever publicly acknowledged guilt in any criminal matter. But even with Alex behind bars, the shadows cast by the family's legacy were still long and dark. One of the most haunting threads that re-emerged was the death of Gloria Satterfield, the Murdaugh's longtime housekeeper. In 2018, Gloria died after what was reported as a trip and fall accident at the Mizell property. But there were no autopsy reports, no death certificate mention of a fall. Just silence and a multi-million-dollar insurance payout that was quietly redirected into Alex's personal bank account, never reaching her sons. Following the murder trial, Gloria's body was exhumed. Investigators launched a new probe into her death, raising fresh questions about what really happened that day in 2018. Was it an accident or something else entirely? The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division has not yet announced conclusive findings, but the mere fact that her death is under renewed investigation speaks volumes. In the post-Murdaugh era, no case connected to the family is off limits anymore. And then there's the case of Stephen Smith in 2015. Stephen's body was found in the middle of a rural road in Hampton County. At first, authorities ruled it a hit and run, but the injuries didn't align. There was no debris, no skid marks, no broken car parts. Just Stephen, his head severely wounded, his body oddly positioned. Miles from his vehicle. Stephen was a bright, openly gay teenager who had reportedly been in contact with members of the Murdaugh family in the months before his death. His mother, Sandy Smith, had never believed the official story. And in the wake of Paul and Maggie's murders, the case was reopened. In 2023, SLED publicly confirmed that Stephen's death was being treated as a homicide. Though no arrests have been made, the Smith family finally saw momentum after nearly a decade of silence and stonewalling. A GoFundMe campaign helped fund an independent autopsy. More witnesses came forward. And Sandy, against impossible odds, kept pushing for answers. Another chapter in the Murdaugh saga. Another life cut short. Another family left shattered. As if that weren't enough, legal battles continued to swirl around the 2019 boat crash that started this chain reaction. The Beach family, still mourning the loss of their daughter Mallory, had filed a wrongful death lawsuit against multiple parties, including Alex Murdaugh and the convenience store that sold alcohol to the underage boaters. In January 2023, that lawsuit finally reached a settlement over $15 million. It was one of the largest wrongful death settlements in South Carolina history. And while no amount of money could bring Mallory back, it marked a moment of closure for a family that had endured both grief and an uphill legal battle against one of the most powerful families in the South. Buster Murdaugh, the sole surviving son, has kept a relatively low profile. Though he was present throughout his father's trial, he has denied any involvement in any criminal activity. Some observers have speculated about what role, if any, he may play in preserving or severing ties with the Murdaugh legacy. For now, he appears to be trying to rebuild a life outside the shadow of the crimes. Meanwhile, documentaries, podcasts, and books continue to dissect every detail of the Murdaugh case. It has become a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of how power, when unchecked, can corrupt to its core. True crime fans, legal scholars, and everyday citizens alike remain captivated not just by the murders, but by the broader tale of deception, privilege, and downfall. That beyond the headlines and courtroom drama lies a deeper, more unsettling truth. This case wasn't just about one man's crimes. It was about the system that allowed it to happen. A small town where connections mattered more than evidence, where cases disappeared, where people were too afraid to speak out. For generations, the Murdaugh name opened doors and closed investigations. That unspoken influence silenced victims, skewed justice, and fostered an environment where truth was a casualty. In many ways, the fall of Alex Murdaugh represents a reckoning, not just for Hampton County, but for all places where power goes unchecked, where loyalty to a name supersedes loyalty to the law. And yet, even now, there are unanswered questions. What really happened to Stephen Smith? Was Gloria Satterfield's fall truly an accident? Were there other secrets buried hidden by a century of privilege and intimidation? We may never know the full truth, but the story of the Murdaugh family will continue to echo through courtrooms, newsrooms, and the dark corridors of Southern history. Because in the end, this wasn't just a murder case. It was the collapse of a dynasty, a reminder that even the most powerful families can fall, and when they do, the crash is deafening. Asterisk, and that brings us to the end of tonight's story. A haunting saga of legacy, lies, and the devastating cost of unchecked power. If you found this story as chilling and compelling as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Goodnight Crime. Your support helps us keep bringing these stories out of the shadows and into the quiet hours of the night. We'll be back soon with more mysteries, more truths, and more stories that linger long after the screen goes dark dot. Until then, stay aware, trust your instincts, and have a peaceful, safe good night.